All right. Well, welcome to today's webinar called Ready, Set, Redevelop, Assessing Your Community's Preparedness. This is our first webinar of the year, and we are excited to get started. We've got a couple more webinars scheduled in March that I'll share later today, but we'll go ahead and jump right into this. A couple housekeeping items. If you have any questions at all throughout the presentation today, or throughout the webinar, please feel free to use the Q&A box. You should see that on your side. Just click on that box and type in your questions, and we'll try to circle back to those later after the webinar. We plan to go for about an hour. We may wrap up a little bit sooner, depending on how many questions we may have. This webinar is one of our CEDIK Brownfield Redevelopment webinar series webinars, really made available and made possible by a partnership with the Kentucky Brownfield office. So we are really excited to get started. And today we're going to be talking about how do we know if we're ready? How do we know if we are ready to get started on a redevelopment project? My name is Shane Barton. I'm the Downtown Revitalization Coordinator for the Community and Economic Development Initiative of Kentucky at the University of Kentucky. I want to make sure you have my email. It's simply shane.barton@uky.edu, and you are more than welcome to email me anytime as a follow-up, or if you have any questions that may hit you after the webinar, feel free to reach out, and I'll be more than welcome to walk you through whatever you may have. So why is this important? Why is the topic today important? Well, the reality is that we are sort of looking at a once in a generation, perhaps a once in a lifetime opportunity for some historic funding. The bipartisan infrastructure law that was recently passed by the federal government really is amplifying not only the value of the actual dollar amount of available grants, but also the frequency, the number of grants that they are investing in communities. So over the next couple of years, we're going to have an opportunity to really go after some substantial federal funding to support brownfield redevelopment. And that is really why this is important. One of the things that is critical as we think about how this really plays out in Kentucky is that the EPA in particularly is focused on targeting underserved communities and new applicants who have not applied for these funds in the past. So if that describes your community, please know that now may be the time to go after these dollars. If you've been on any of the previous webinars in the past, you've probably seen this image, and I always like to sort of draw your attention to it. And if you haven't downloaded or looked at the EPA's Revitalization Ready Guide, I would invite you to. There is a wealth of information in there, really a wonderful guide. And this is sort of their process. They start by thinking about sort of understanding the needs and collecting information, and evaluating, moving into defining your path forward and making it happen. But what we're going to talk about today is really what comes before this. How do you know if your community is ready to start taking on this arc of work, to start understanding the needs and collecting information? And that's really the beginning point for today's conversation. So when I ask, is your community ready to take on a redevelopment project? What I really mean is, are you prepared mentally or physically for some experience or action, right? Like we are talking about an action moving forward. Are we ready to do something? Are we prepared for an immediate use or immediately available? Can we do it right now? Are we inclined to do the work, and are we likely to do it? And all four of these sort of tie into community readiness, and we'll talk a little bit deeper about what we mean by that when we talk about and showcase some of the community readiness assessments. So when we're talking about readiness and readiness assessments, these assessments can really help your community identify, what factors you may have in place right now that you can leverage for future revitalization efforts. These assessments also provide you a little context about how you may be able to overcome some of those challenges or places to start. The two readiness assessments that I want to highlight today both provide, after you go through them, both provide you with sort of a wonderful starting place and some resources to get started. So both of them provide that little extra bit to help you take that next step. But when we're really talking about sort of community or project readiness, we're talking about how prepared are you to take on or tackle the issue or project at hand. And let's be honest, readiness can vary widely from community to community. On one end, we may have absolutely no awareness about an issue or about an opportunity. And then on the other end, we may have complete ownership at the community level where the community is leading the charge or implementing that effort. And we'll sort of talk through what we mean sort of through this spectrum from no awareness up to community ownership and what that actually entails. So here, I always like to start. These are a couple sort of reflective questions that'll help us sort of jump into these readiness assessments. And I always, when I first meet with communities, these are some of the questions that I like to kind of talk around and talk through, have a conversation about, and see where we are. So, we may start by just asking, what efforts or, programs, policies, et cetera, are already underway or have been completed to address the issue that you have. And if we're talking about brownfields or abandoned, vacant, derelict, underutilized buildings, there may be things that you've already done or policies that you've already implemented to approach that topic. Are you aware of any community planning efforts? Have you done any visioning or redevelopment planning that addresses this issue at hand? What does the community actually know about these activities that you've done, if you have completed activities or made progress towards creating that plan? What kind of support exists? Is there latent community support? Is there pushback? What's the community conversation? What type of information are community members accessing to inform their opinions about this project or about this issue? We also want to think about who are the people that get things done in your community? Are they playing a role in this effort? Are they involved? Are they a champion? Are they creating roadblocks? How are the people that other folks in your community listen to, how are they connected to this effort? And how can we maybe get them involved? And then, thinking about the prevailing attitudes in the community. Is it a concern? Is it an issue? Are folks aware? Is there kind of a vague awareness? Are they intimately aware? Are they experiencing direct negative impacts? How is this issue or project actually impacting the community, and how do people think about it? And then we may also talk about what are some of those obstacles that we're trying to address? What are the obstacles we know we have to overcome? What resources do we have available to maybe overcome them or help us start to approach those obstacles? Are there available resources in terms of funding, volunteers, leaders with particular expertise or interest in this? So these questions really start to give us a broad understanding of how ready we are. And I pulled these directly from a community readiness sort of assessment, a conversation that I like to have with communities. And if you're interested in learning more, I would be more than willing to have this conversation with you and see kind of where your community may fit within this scale from no awareness to ownership, and think about places where we may be able to kickstart the conversation. Again, when we think about community or project readiness, on one end, we usually start with no awareness. People just aren't aware. They don't know that it's an issue. They don't know that it exists. They don't know that there's an impact being created. All the way to that ownership where they know where they know it exists, they know there's impacts, and they have owned the solutions and are beginning to implement them. Now, depending on where your community falls, along this scale or along this spectrum, it may impact where we begin. So for example, if there is no awareness about the issue, we may start with sort of community data or doing some assessments together to get a baseline understanding or a baseline awareness of what the current conditions are. We may then use that to initiate some outreach or some education with the broader community, or think about ways to engage them in conversations or creating solutions to that issue. We may move into then thinking about what is our community vision? How do we want to overcome this? What do we want to be as we then think about what those redevelopment plans are? But I want to go through each of these 9 community and project readiness sort of defining points along the spectrum and talk a little bit more about what we mean by these. So when we start off with a project that folks may not fully be engaged in, there may not be a lot of awareness. And really what we mean here is that the issue isn't generally recognized by the community or leaders as a problem. They may not necessarily acknowledge that it's an issue. On one hand, they may just not be exposed to it, or it may not be a topic of concern that those voices are loud around. Not to critique anyone with or a community with no awareness. It's often where we start when issues emerge. We also have denial and resistance. This is where, there may be some community members that recognize it as a concern or recognize it as an issue, but there's little broad acknowledgement that it is an issue, that folks just deny that it's a problem that needs to be addressed. Then we move into kind of a vague awareness, where many people feel that it's a local concern, but there's really no motivation to address it. That it's there, it's just how it's going to be. It is what it is, if you will. But what are we going to do to address it? Or maybe we're just not motivated to approach the issue. Then we move into pre-planning, where there is sort of a broad and clear recognition that something must be done. We've acknowledged that there is that local concern. We've moved beyond sort of the ambivalence, the lack of motivation, and we've moved in to that point where we really want to get things done. We want to bring a group together to address it. But maybe those efforts aren't really focused yet. They're not very detailed. But that pre-planning phase is really where that motivation starts to be harnessed and future steps can start to take place. Then we move into preparation. This is where our active leaders, those voices, the people that get things done, if you will, begin planning. They begin taking this issue seriously, and they begin. They're sort of the beginning of some modest movement towards addressing the issue at hand. Okay? Then we initiate this thing, right? There's enough information available, enough concern about the issue, enough motivation to act, to be able to justify sort of moving forward or making potential investments at the municipal level or within your organization to address this situation. This is when we have activities starting to take place, right? As those activities sort of stabilize, we move into the next phase. And this is where those activities are supported by your sort of formal leadership, the county judge executive or the mayor or other elected leaders, executive directors of nonprofits that have a little influence or have some resources to invest, or the administrators of sort of other organizations, or those broad community leaders. This is when we start to see staff get involved, really meaning that the municipality or those nonprofits or quasi-governmental organizations are taking it serious, that staff are being trained and they're being deployed to address the issue. Now, these two late stages really move us towards sort of community ownership. We may have the program or project in place, community members are feeling comfortable, they're using the services or they're supporting the expansion of that project to address the issue at hand. And then the local data, there is a feedback loop of local data evaluation of the impact. Are we achieving the outcomes that we set out to achieve with this project? Are we shifting or changing the issue? Are we improving the condition that we're trying to approach? And are we tracking data that informs us about how well we're doing and what we may want to change or revise as we move into the future? Now, the last stage here really is what we all aim for. This is community ownership. This is when there's sort of a latent, detailed, and more sophisticated understanding of the issue and how to solve the issue. There is sort of an effective evaluation unfolding where we know how to revise or take different steps or improve our impacts or amplify our impacts. And we're starting to model what we're doing, or perhaps other people are starting to model our effort as best practice. This is where the community is kind of owning it, and the community is moving things forward. That's the goal. And as we think about sort of engaging our communities, what we're ultimately trying to create is a system or a situation where the community at large owns that effort and really supports the effort moving forward. Okay. So, but what's the first step, right? Do we have a conversation? Do we create a team? What's the first step here? For us at CEDIK, when we think about the redevelopment process, it really starts with the team. And I apologize if you hear a dog bark in the background here. But as we look at this circle, we're really sort of starting with the establishment of the team to move this effort forward and do some of that engagement. In particular with brownfield redevelopment, we're looking at, can we work collectively together to create a community vision? Can we work together to do that building inventory, some of those early assessments at the community level? So I always like to say it starts with the team. In fact, next month, we will be hosting 2 more webinars. And one of those webinars, we're going to spend completely focused on sort of the team dynamic, looking back at our downtown revitalization work over the last many years and looking at each of those team members and kind of dissecting what roles and interests brought them to the table. So if you'd like to learn more about those downtown teams that we worked with, in particular in Eastern Kentucky and the Promise Zone, I would invite you to check out this website, where you can simply Google CEDIK Downtown Team Series, and you will find a series of documents where we have articulated sort of the team dynamics within some of our downtown work that we have seen be quite successful over the last few years. But the first toolkit that I want to start with is the Rural America Placemaking Toolkit. This is a partnership between CEDIK and the USDA. Really an amazing set of resources. I would invite you to check it out. It's simply www.ruralplacemaking.com. Pretty simple website to remember. But on this placemaking toolkit, there is a wonderful assessment to get started. It's free, and it'll only take you, I think, maybe 15, 20, 30 minutes or so, depending on sort of how quick you can navigate it. Each question has 3 responses. There's statements, and what you're going to basically respond to is this very similar to my community? Does this resonate with me? It's somewhat similar. It's kind of like how our community is, or this is not my community at all. And the system will track your responses. It provides a score for each response. And at the end, when you finish the assessment, it'll give you a sense of where you are, and it'll also direct you to resources from this website that you may want to start working with. Again, a great resource. I love pulling from this. I love sharing particular resources. There are lots of great ideas about how to have creative conversations in your community, and I would most certainly recommend you check this out if you haven't already. But I want to showcase some of the questions that you're going to encounter if you go through this community assessment, community readiness assessment, specifically for rural placemaking. Okay, so if we think about what we were talking about in terms of readiness. Sort of what we touched on from in that 9-point scale, from no awareness of community ownership. You'll see some of those themes emerge here in some of these questions. Now, these are not all of the questions. These are just some of the questions, and I just wanted to pull out some of them just momentarily. So the first question is, do we have an active downtown committee? Do we have a team of at least 6 people who are committed to this practice, or committed to this idea, this project? Do we have elected officials who are actively prioritizing our downtown or our topic at large, right? Our community identity and narrative is reflective of multiple generations, cultures, history. We are a diverse community where we draw on all of those experiences of our residents to define ourselves. Now, can you name 5 women in leadership roles in your community? Or can you name 5 people of color in leadership roles in your community? Do you have the youth actively involved in decision-making regarding downtown programs or events? So you can see these really relate back to the team, to the leadership, to those diverse constituents who are interested or should be at the table as we move forward thinking about these ideas or developing projects related to them. Some more questions directly from the Rural Placemaking Assessment. Our downtown housing has a mix of subsidized, affordable, or high-end options. We're thinking about everyone in our community. Do you know where to find vacancy or occupancy rates for downtown buildings? You may anecdotally know because you see them, but do you know where to find the data? Would you feel comfortable having your child or your parent live in any of those downtown housing units? What's the quality? What's your perception of quality? Have you simply implemented any placemaking projects in your downtown? Have you thought about how to make your downtown a place for people? Has that crossed your mind yet? When a significant event occurs, is there a common location that your community just instinctively knows to go to? And you see this in a lot of great downtowns, that there are dedicated places that where repetitive activities sort of create a destination where folks know that if there is a downtown event happening, that is where you can go and have a fun time, or a place where you can go to sort of explore or access amenities, whether it be restaurants or green spaces. Can your downtown be easily navigated by a wheelchair or with a stroller or by someone in a walker? Thinking about broad accessibility. Is your community pedestrian friendly? Are the streets well lit? Can you name 5 tangible things in your downtown that distinguishes you from other cities? Have you valued the preservation of your downtown buildings? For example, have you implemented a facade improvement program to support local businesses or property owners in your downtown? Or have you considered code enforcement? And if you have, is it strictly or equitably enforced in your downtown? So this starts to give us a little sense of, do we recognize the issue at hand as a problem, and have we started to address it? Or are these perhaps some of the issues that we may want to focus on or learn more about? Right? And then lastly, some of the things to think about here is, do we have a master plan that's less than 5 years old that we actively follow, right? There's kind of 3 pieces to that. Do you have a plan? Some folks or some communities don't, some do, right? Is it relatively recent? How old is it? Is it within the last 5 years? And then the last piece here are you actively utilizing it? Are you implementing it? Are you pulling from that plan and leveraging other dollars, or using that to justify grant funding and grant applications? Are you using that plan? Are you actively implementing it? As a planner, we often joke that our worst enemy is the shelf that plan sits on, because what we don't want is for that plan to be created and just put on a shelf and forgotten about. Plans are made to be used, and it's key here to think about, not only do we have a recent plan, but are we actively following it? And do we have a comprehensive process to gather input from residents? How are we informing the plan? How are we informing these ideas? How are we engaging our communities, right? And I will share that I went through the rural placemaking assessment, sort of inputting responses similar to many of the communities that I find myself working in. And it always directed me to start with the creative conversations piece within their toolkit, and I would invite you to start there as well. There's a number of wonderful, wonderful programs that allow you to have some really creative conversations in ways that don't feel draining. They're not formal settings like a listening session or a big public meeting. They allow people to be creative. It really creates some shared experiences and having those conversations. So again, I invite you to check out that resource. And if you'd ever like to discuss some of these resources or some of these specific opportunities shared in that creative conversations piece on the Rural Placemaking Toolkit, please reach out, send me an email, and I'd be more than willing to talk through it with you or connect you with folks who have implemented or shared that idea with us. Okay. The second assessment that I want to share, and again, this is a free community assessment that you can access online yourself at the downtownplaybook.org, www.downtownplaybook.org. This is a wonderful, wonderful report and toolkit that really talks about downtown investment, where the previous toolkit that I shared was really about placemaking and making places for people. This toolkit really has the angle around how do we get money invested in our community? How do we start to move forward with our idea or our issue, and then actually take those steps towards reinvestment in buildings and places in our downtown. Similar, but just slightly different in the way that it looks. I love how the Downtown Investment Playbook starts to frame the team, and I love how it starts to sort of organize the steps from your planning activities to the redevelopment activities to making choices, analyzing what those activities would be, and then implementing and managing those choices. Again, a wonderful free resource that I invite all of you to check out in your own time. A great resource. And I'll be sharing this in a follow-up. We are recording this webinar. And once we get it uploaded, I will make sure to share it with everyone, along with all of these resources and some other materials that you may want to reference as we think about reflecting on this idea of, are we ready? Is our community ready? Where do we find ourselves on that 9-point scale related to community readiness? Now, the readiness assessment for the Downtown Playbook is similar, but it looks a little different. It takes a little different approach. It includes sort of 5 broad categories that it asks questions, and those categories are community assets, local government and civic structures, the economic ecosystem, your built infrastructure, and your natural environment. So again, this one is really focused on thinking about downtown revitalization and enticing and really moving forward and creating a kind of a fertile ecosystem to attract and retain investment, in particular in downtown buildings and spaces. Now, these are multiple choice questions again, so you're not putting in short answers. You're really just sort of checking a box, if you will. These are statements, and the answers here are yes, no, or somewhat. The system scores your responses similar to the Rural Placemaking Toolkit and provides you a starting point where to go. It breaks down the responses, I think, into 4 broad categories depending on your score. Again, this is a free resource, and I will be sharing all of these links with you with the recording, perhaps within the week or so. So, just to give you a little breakdown of what we mean by the 5 categories here. When we're talking about community assets, it's really questions thinking about your partners, your team, the leadership, the networks within the community, and essentially the capacity of all of these groups to have a plan and to achieve those shared priorities. So again, you can see some of these similar attributes, right? The team, the capacity, the leadership, sort of coming out or rising to the surface. The next piece, the local governments and civic structures, is really about what's the community self-identity? How is local government helping? And are they using municipal tools? Or is there a level of municipal investment or commitment being made? The third piece, this economic ecosystem, is really sort of, the goal of an economic ecosystem is to nurture and create a fertile environment for the economy to become connected, innovative, and rooted in the community assets, responding to the community assets. This one is a little different when compared to the Rural Placemaking Toolkit. We really do get into some economic systems with this assessment. The built infrastructure, obviously critical when we're thinking about community revitalization, in particular as we're thinking about development or investment. But this is sort of your water, your wastewater, your utilities, roads, sidewalks for pedestrian infrastructure, broadband, all of those sort of key resources that really do enable successful downtown revitalization, and frankly, are required for successful implementation, successful projects in a downtown. But we have to remind ourselves that all of these infrastructure pieces, they have to be accessible, flexible, and we hope they can push forward community health and resiliency. Time and time again, we see kind of the linchpin in development being some of these built infrastructure systems, whether it be water or wastewater capacity or a lack of broadband access. This infrastructure piece really is kind of foundational to the scale of development that is possible in your community. And then lastly, the Downtown Investment Playbook really focuses on the natural environment. What are those connections to the natural world, whether it be through local parks or bike trails or other connected networks of paths or pathways? How are we making our natural landscape sort of a part of our built landscape? For many rural downtowns and rural communities, it is these natural connections, these connections to the natural environment and natural assets that really become kind of a jumping off point. They are often, outside of the people and the residents, are often noted as sort of the second or third most important asset when we think about the strengths of our communities. So again, slightly different than the Rural Placemaking Toolkit. This Downtown Investment Playbook Community Readiness Assessment really focuses on 5 major topics. And you can see this one includes the built infrastructure and the economic ecosystem, where we don't necessarily see many of those questions in the Rural Placemaking Toolkit. Again, I would invite you to take both. They're both free, and they'll both give you a wonderful place to sort of start your conversation in your community. Okay. But let's look at some of the specific questions that are asked in each of these categories. So again, we'll start with community assets. These are the partners, the leaders, sort of the networks, and the capacity of these groups. So questions that you'll encounter as a part of this Downtown Playbook, or statements that you're going to respond yes, no, or somewhat. This first one is that your leadership is willing to learn, is willing to think outside the box. And is responsive to input from local stakeholders and residents, right? That a connector, and connector, what we mean here is once you get into this playbook, you will see different team members and their archetypes. And the connector is sort of that local person who has the connections, who is willing to kind of be a network weaver and bring all of those stakeholders together. So do you have a connector? Do you have a person who is responsive to emails or calls, is knowledgeable enough about the project to quickly respond? Is there the ability to engage diverse stakeholders in a broad range of local community members? Can you foster respect in those conversations? Is there a sense of openness to new perspectives or collaboration? So again, you can see some common themes playing out here when we think about leadership. Is leadership willing to listen and be responsive to your local community? Is there a system to allow diverse stakeholders to be involved and to contribute to those conversations or solutions, right? So you can start to see how some of these pieces are connected even across both community readiness assessments. 2 questions that you'll encounter, there are more, but these are just a couple, in the local government and civic structures section of the Downtown Investment Playbook. Does your Downtown Revitalization Working Group or your Brownfield Redevelopment Working Group or your Main Street organization, or downtown revitalization coordinator or Main Street executive director, are they supported by local residents and local businesses? Do you have civic groups that promote the streetscape improvements or affordable commercial space? Or are you talking about appropriate zoning in your downtown? Is there a plan or a process to incentivize redevelopment? Again, you're going to be responding yes, no, or maybe, and the system will score and provide you with a response on where to start. Again, you can see some of these themes and how they're connected across both readiness assessments. In our economic ecosystem section, what you're going to find are a number of questions sort of around business and business engagement. So, is there an organization, or is there sort of an understanding, of the focus and diversity of businesses? Do you understand sort of what exists? Is there a number of organizations that are working on different elements of that business community? Are there retail, food? Are there attraction, services, small manufacturing, education, residential spaces? Yes, no, maybe, right? Are there business engagement networking opportunities? Is your chamber or your Main Street organization active? And are they actively bringing people together to talk about these issues and to talk about sort of the plan and the vision for the future? Is there a business-friendly environment with an existing demand, for local products or services? Is there public sector involvement in the business environment? How is the local municipality or local government incentivizing or supporting local businesses, promoting local business opportunities? Are they championing your Main Street businesses or your city businesses at large? So again, there will be a number of questions that specifically speak to and ask about sort of the economic ecosystem of your community, which is a little different than what you will find in the Rural Placemaking Toolkit. Okay. Now, the built-in environment here, these are pretty simple questions, pretty straightforward, probably the most straightforward of all of the assessment questions of the two community readiness assessments I'm sharing today. But do you have access to broadband? Are design and aesthetics embedded in your downtown planning? Are you concerned about what downtown looks like? Are you concerned about what the buildings look like or sort of what that visual appeal is of your community? Do you have resilient wastewater or water supply systems? Are there sidewalks or trails or other outdoor structures for people to connect, gather, and have access to other places? Is there a sense of accessibility, right? Remember that statement a moment ago. In the placemaking toolkit, could you push a stroller, or would someone in a wheelchair could they navigate your community? Right. These are things to consider as we sort of rank and evaluate our built environment. Okay. And then lastly, the natural environment. Specific questions related to those connections with the natural world or green spaces. Do you have access to or do you maintain natural assets in your community? Are there greenways or bike paths that connect your community? Or do they connect to your downtown? Are there parks or pocket parks, smaller parks? Are there trees and flowers or other greenery that are included in your downtown? Again, kind of going back to that aesthetic piece. But how are we thinking about the natural environment? Again, these questions will be responded in yes, no, or maybe, and the system will score and rank your responses. Now, lastly, before we wrap up, and we're a little early here, but I also have a readiness assessment. I shared some of those early reflective questions. What I would invite you to do is, if you have any questions, feel free to give me a ring or shoot me an email. Again, my email is shane.barton@uky.edu, and I would be more than willing to talk through sort of community readiness with you. Could talk you and walk you through both of these assessments that I've shared today, the Rural Placemaking Toolkit and the Downtown Investment Playbook. I'm also going to be sharing a webinar that the EPA recently hosted, showcasing the Downtown Investment Playbook and how that was leveraged, so you can get a sense of how perhaps to leverage and utilize that resource as well. But again, I invite you to give me a ring or shoot me an email. Like I said, I can go through the two assessments that we've shared today, or I can also go through the assessment that I've developed and think about where a good starting point for you could be related to the goals that you're trying to achieve. So with that said, I want to thank you all so much. Again, my name is Shane Barton. I'm the Downtown Revitalization Coordinator for the Community and Economic Development Initiative of Kentucky. You can reach me on my email, shane.barton, B-A-R-T-O-N, at uky.edu. But for right now, I'm going to go ahead and stop my share and just check out and see if we have any Q&A. It doesn't look like we've got many questions. I know today's webinar was fairly brief, but I hope that you're able to take some of these resources. Again, they are free. You can use them at your will and on your own time. All you have to do is just click on those links. I will send those with the recordings, and they'll give you some good feedback on good places to start. Also, as a part of our follow-up email, when I send the recording, I will send you the registrations for 2 upcoming webinars in March. I'm doing 2 in March. One is going to be on the teams. Remember, it all starts with the team. So we're going to focus our next webinar really thinking about who should be on that team, different ways we think about those redevelopment teams, what brings those team members to the table, what roles they often play, why are they motivated to be a part of the team, and then we're also going to have another webinar really focusing on some additional topics that are going to be of concern as we move forward. But I want to plug that team piece first because it really is critical. It is foundational as we move forward. It looks like we've got a question here. Comment. Thank you very much, Jim, for joining us. Don't worry about coming in late, but you will certainly get the recording. Okay. Without further ado, I won't keep you from the rest of your afternoon. This was just a quick webinar, but I will be following up with some of these resources. And again, if you have any questions or have any questions after the fact, please feel free to reach out, shane.barton@uky.edu, and I will help walk you through either of these assessments or have a more in-depth conversation about your community's readiness. Have a great day, and we'll talk soon. Take care, everyone. Bye.